in my opinion, all the religions except for Christianity have come from Zoroastrianism. That's my opinion.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Sorry, except for
Christianity.
Test the claim.
Okay, great. Hi, Cyrus. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Okay, good. I don't have any planned topic here, but just wanted to, just a little curious about, I think you mentioned something about a new project you've been working on. So I just wanted to get a little bit more detail on what that project might be and what inspired you to do that project.
The project is somewhat educational. However, there is a certain amount of ancestral and cultural patriotism driving that project. It's called.
I like patriotism, actually. I think that's a good thing.
Right. Some people mistake my drive as being nationalism, but actually I'm a civilizationalist. So I'm of Iranian descent, Iranian ancestry.
Would you rather use the word Persian or do you like the word Iranian? Because there is some kind of a thing about it. I don't know what it is.
Some people mistakenly, in my opinion, conflate or use Iranian and Persian interchangeably.
Yeah.
However, this is quite a multi-layered issue because both Iranian and Persian, the terms both have multiple meanings.
They do.
So
the Aryans, as far as I know, Aryans came from Iran, or is that Iranians are Aryans, or Aryans were Iranians? Is that a correlation there?
Etymologically, the word Iran means Aryan, or the land of the Aryans.
Aryans, yes.
And the Aryans were an Indo-Iranian peoples who were a branch of the Indo-European people originally.
I see.
And the Indo-Europeans are a ethno-linguistic group. So they are the ethnicities that spoke a particular family of languages that branched off into the Europeans, making up probably 90% of the speakers of European languages.
Yeah, Indo-European languages, which is, I would argue that it started from Sanskrit, but I don't know if you might agree with that. But
I think Sanskrit appears later in the story.
In the story?
Yeah. Okay. So let me explain. Okay. Maybe I'll give like a more full explanation.
Please.
So actually, in 2023, new research was published.
Okay. So that research hasn't come in, through. I haven't seen that.
Okay.
So maybe that's news to me. Go ahead.
This was published in, I think it was in the journal Science, and it was a study conducted by the Max Planck Institute of Archaeological Anthropology in partnership with the University of Auckland and a number of other institutions. And it
University of
Auckland.
Oh, is it
New Zealand?
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
I thought Auckland because I'm from California.
Not Auckland.
Okay. There was no university in Auckland, but okay, sorry.
And it drew upon the expertise of some 80 or so linguists, and they compiled a new data set of Proto-Indo-European vocabulary to ultimately to discern the motherland of that linguistic tradition, or what is known as the Urheimat, the motherland of a particular linguistic tradition. And the previous most popular hypotheses were the older one being that the homeland of the Proto-Indo-European language family was in the Fertile Crescent, so somewhere maybe in Mesopotamia. The slightly younger hypothesis, or the other popular hypothesis was that the Proto-Indo-European languages were younger and originated in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, or the steppe lands between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. So like southern Ukraine or the northern Caucasus. However, this data set, which is considered, at least by the people who published it, the most robust data set of its kind, located the Urheimat, the homeland of the Proto-Indo-European languages, as being to the south of the Caucasus. So that would put it in northwestern Iran, eastern Anatolia, perhaps part of Armenia, that type of area. So what may have happened is people would have gone west from there, but mainly north into the Caucasus and then out into the plains.
So did they have a name for that primal language, mother language of these
So
languages?
they abbreviate it as PIE, Proto-Indo-European. So these people would have gone up into the steppe lands, the kind of pasture lands between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and then spread outwards, becoming the Europeans and the Indo-Iranians. And then you have kind of the emergence of a number of societies like Yamnaya culture and so on.
Which culture?
Yamnaya, Andronovo.
What is Yamnaya?
So it's just a name given to an ethno-linguistic group or a society that lived somewhere in that story.
Okay, because it's nothing to do with Yemen then.
No. It's actually in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So the Yamnaya and peoples like this are kind of the ancestors of the Aryan people. They would have been nomadic or semi-nomadic pastoralist people. So they would have cultivated cattle or livestock of some sort, as opposed to their agricultural cousins.
This is going back, what time in history?
This is going back, I believe, according to this latest study that was published in July last year, around 7,500 years ago.
Okay.
So, so these people traveled north into the Pontic-Caspian steppe and split into the Europeans and the Indo-Iranians. The Indo-Iranians then went east around the Caspian Sea. This is what the most popular hypotheses state. And then began to travel south, some returning back onto the Iranian plateau, becoming the Iranians. And so this is roughly where the split occurs. Shortly after the split between the Indo-Aryans and the Iranians. So the Indo-Aryans settled down towards the Indus Valley, the Hindu Kush, this kind of area, or northern India, and the Iranians, as the name
Indus
might
Valley
suggest.
civilization is supposed to be a very old civilization.
Right. So these people may well have interacted with the Indus Valley civilization, and further south with the Dravidian peoples, or who may have been considered the indigenous or native.
Well, there was in the Indian or Pakistani history, they talk about the Aryan invasion.
Yeah, I'm aware of the Aryan invasion theory. I mean, it's somewhat inflammatory to describe it that way.
Well,
but these were.
But is it? The point is not. I mean, the point is it accurate though? When you say they interacted, are you saying that they were invading? As in
I'll say
conquering?
they would have been entering into that realm, and they would have been settling there.
Hello, they weren't invited, so were they entering in a way to conquer those lands?
If they were entering a region where there were people opposing them who were already there, and they won, then you would argue that it was a conquest.
True.
So the Iranians, who are also an Aryan people who settled on the Iranian plateau, would have arguably interacted with the descendants of the people who were there when their ancestors left the Iranian plateau. So in a way, it's a type of a homecoming. The Persians, as one example of an Iranian people, are generally considered to be a merging of these Iranian pastoralists, the ones who had broken off from the Indo-Iranian society, and what are known as the Iranian agriculturalists. Now, they wouldn't have known them themselves.
What are pastoralists?
Pastoralists are people who take care of livestock.
Livestock, so as in pasture, okay.
Versus agriculturalists who were farmers. So this is
So there was
almost
a
like
distinction
a Cain
between
and
the two.
Abel
It's
type
like
of idea. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
doesn't it? So yeah, this kind of as a good point, maybe we segue to something more to do with your religion, because you keep telling me that Christianity and Judaism has its roots in Zoroastrianism. Is that still, or
I wouldn't say they have their roots. I would say that fundamental themes found in the Abrahamic family of religions have their home in Iranian thought, in Zoroastrian theology, and I think that's I think that that's pretty conclusive at this point.
Okay. Well, then if you make such a strong statement, you can. I would consider that to be a very inflammatory and very, as you think that maybe Aryan invasion is an inflammatory statement. I think what you just said is kind of like a very inflammatory statement because it's just like it's your belief, which you onus is on you now to come up with something that the audience would say that this guy is not somebody that comes to the speaker corner just because he's one of the kooks that come over there. He has something that he has researched and is worth listening to.
Kooks at Speaker's Corner?
I don't know. Some people say that they let the doors open or something on the Sundays or something. The people, come here.
The doors of the funny house.
Left open or something.
So what type of evidence?
Because this statement that you make, it's like, oh well, they have their home and whatever from this. So to me, I would use the word root. I don't know if you have anything against that word, but what I hear from you is that your basis of your religion is coming from my religion, is what I'm saying.
So first of all, when you say your religion, my religion,
yes,
so
I do say your religion.
I need to create a clear distinction between Orthodox Zoroastrianism, meaning the type of religious practice that was preserved or exported from Sasanian Persia. So there was an institutionalized Zoroastrian orthodoxy established in Persia.
And there was a deviation because there was one of the kings mentioned in the Bible who had started worshipping the moon, I think, was one of the deities that he was worshipping. I forget the name of that person, but you had mentioned him once before. He was supposed to be worshipping the Zoroastrian gods or something, and he kind of like, wasn't he a rebel or something in your tradition as well?
I don't know who you're talking about specifically.
Nikolai, something like, I forget right now. I think we had a previous conversation where you mentioned his name. I always seem to forget his name, but he's mentioned in the Bible as well.
Are you talking about Manichaeism?
I think Mani. So. I don't know. Yeah, what was that Mani story, by the way?
Well, first of all, there are a number of lesser-known Iranian religions, which in their own time were incredibly successful. So we have Zoroastrianism, which you're aware of. We have...
are those offshoots of Zoroastrianism?
There are offshoots of Zoroastrianism. Okay. There are what you could call Zoroastrian heresies. In fact, what is considered the Zoroastrian orthodoxy, I would argue, is heretical to Zarathustra's original doctrine.
You're saying the orthodoxy is heretical, and your thought, which comes from...
So, in Zarathustra's original teachings,
yes.
See, I'm interested in understanding his teachings. Otherwise, why call it Zoroastrianism if you're not going to follow Zarathustra? However, my understanding is that later Zoroastrian orthodoxy follows very, very closely the teachings of subsequent sages, the disciples of Zarathustra and subsequent sages who developed upon Zarathustra's teachings.
So what you're following right now, does it have a name or is it a branch of Zoroastrianism? Can we give it?
So Zarathustra never called himself a Zoroastrian. That's the first thing.
Well, if he's Zarathustra, then that means that he's not going to call himself, I'm the follower of me.
Right. So
like Christ didn't say I'm a Christian.
In the same respect, I use the word Zoroastrian for ease of understanding.
Yeah. Right.
So that people can understand whose teachings I'm talking about. But actually, he would have described his own beliefs or his own practice as Mazda Yasna.
Mazda
Yasna.
Yasna. So Mazda is God.
Mazda is the name for God according to Zarathustra.
Okay.
Mazda literally meaning wisdom.
Wisdom.
So the full name is Ahura Mazda.
Ahura Mazda.
Ahura meaning Lord or
Mazda.
Titan.
Titan. Don't say that because now that's a totally... because Titan is the gods of the sons of...
You're talking about Greek mythology.
No, I'm talking about Genesis 6. Sons of fallen angels became Titans.
Good. But actually, it's an important correlation to make.
Yeah,
You see, because when I read, and I actually mentioned this on a recent in a recent conversation, when I'm reading the story about what happened in the Garden of Eden, I look at the serpent and say what he did was righteous. Why
You do.
Why
But
withhold?
that would totally be in line with Gnosticism, wouldn't it?
Well, Gnosticism. It can be argued that Gnosticism is heavily influenced by Zarathustra.
Well, I would totally agree with you there, because if you're saying that
They have this dualistic
they
worldview.
have all of that.
Yeah.
So of course, so in my opinion, there's only two religions in the world. There's Christianity, and then there's everything else, which comes from what, in my opinion, all the religions except for Christianity have come from Zoroastrianism. That's my opinion.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Sorry, except for
Except for Christianity, because when you go to the Garden of Eden, because now, when you mention the Garden of Eden, is that Garden of Eden mentioned in your text?
Paradise is mentioned in Zarathustra's text.
So then the story of the Garden of Eden is not mentioned in
Not
it.
really, no.
Then you cannot. Well, okay, then okay.
I'm making a moral judgment about what I read in Genesis, not
Got you.
not.
All right, got you. You don't follow it though.
No.
Right, I know.
We don't have that narrative.
No, don't have that narrative. That's good. I'm glad you made that clear, because somebody might get confused when you use that terminology.
Right.
Because here's the thing. When people say that, well, Hinduism is older than Christianity, Bible came 3,000 years ago, whatever, and Hindus' books were there for 5, 10,000, whatever. You might come along and say, no, my
They don't
religion.
say that.
They do.
They're not 5 or 10,000.
How long is it?
3 to 3,500.
Okay, no. If
The
you ask
oldest-
the Hindus, no.
Their oldest scriptures are 3 to 3,500. The Sanskrit teachings,
Okay. When I ask the Hindus,
the Vedas.
the Vedas
Yeah.
are more than 3,000-4,000
No.
years. Okay, that's your opinion. You're not a Hindu. I'm talking about Hindu.
I'm talking about linguistically, but okay, that's a faith claim.
Okay, that's a faith claim, you would say. That's very interesting, because now the history of according to you, the history of India would go back only 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, when you guys came down to those civilizations,
No, because people would have been living there already.
and they would have had a faith, right?
Yeah.
What faith would they have had?
Well, so they would have had the kind of local. They would have
Hinduism.
practiced their. Well, okay. If by Hinduism you mean you're taking the word Hindu literally to mean the religions of the Indus area.
Yeah,
Then
the
yes.
Hindu word comes from Sindhu. Sindhu, it comes from Sindh.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that word? Who do you think came up with that nomenclature? This was the name the Persians gave to those people and that part of the world.
Do you have anything to back that up?
Yes.
Okay, it would be interesting to see what that might be and what the veracity of that is. However, what my point is this. The Christianity, I would say, started from the Garden of Eden, because Christianity mentions the whole narrative starts from there.
But it's a book. It's a piece of literature which describes past events.
True.
It's not written in the time of those events.
Of course not.
So how are you dating that literature? Are you dating that literature based on the events it describes?
Events.
Or on the time it was written?
No, not the time. Not the time. The time.
That itself is a faith claim.
No, I'll explain a little bit further. I think you'll understand now. When it talks about this, when things were not written down, that means there was no Judaism, no Yahweh, and all of this stuff didn't exist, right? Then that would, oops. I was going to dive for it, but then I just thought maybe not. It's too late. Oh.